today, here's what I got to do. I'm just going to be really honest. I'm going to try to stay in this experience. I'm going to try to stay in a teaching mode more than a preaching mode. You'll appreciate that later because it just went weird. And I just want to preface some stuff. Like, I really feel like God's got a word for a lot of people. But here's the thing. Sometimes we never get what God has for us because we're offended. And so I promise you, it'll offend you today on some level. It's just going to. But that's okay. If we can get past the offense in life, to really, truly grow, we have to get past people offending us. So we're gonna be offended. I was offended, and I preached the daggone thing. And so it's going to be all right. And so, anyways, hey, why don't you just tap your neighbor real quick? Say, this is going to be a ride. Hang on. Is it going to be a good one? All right. I hope it's good. Anyways, we're going, and man, I hope you brought your sense of humor. Let me tell you something. 10 o'clock, no humor. 0. I don't know what happened. I probably had something to do with that. Luke chapter 4. Jesus is talking to some religious people. He's teaching in the synagogue. And so, but it's an interesting story that he tells here. You'll see why here in just a second. Starting in verse 25, he says, I assure you that there were many widows in Israel in Elijah's time. So Elijah was known as one of the greatest prophets that's ever walked the face of the earth. And so this would have been a very familiar character to them, a very familiar story to them. It says, when the sky was shut for 3.5 years, there was a severe famine throughout the land. Yet Elijah wasn't sent to any of them, but to a widow in Zarephath in the region of Sidon. Have you ever experienced anything in life that was incredible or moving or funny, and then you tried to explain that experience to other people later on, and it just doesn't go so well? You know what I'm saying? Like you're talking, man, you're into it, but you can just see like their faces glazed over like a donut, man. It's like, and you know what? Like after a while, you just get a little bit frustrated, and you're just like, never mind. Guess you had to be there. You should have just been there. Should have just been there. I think that's I feel that way about church sometimes. You know, last week was an incredible move of God. I get a lot of texts. It's always by people that are gone or whatever. And say, how'd church go? I don't know. It was great, but words can't. You had to be there. You had to be there. And that's the way I feel about it sometimes, you know, whenever there's a powerful move of God that goes on. It's just hard to explain. It's just like, man, you should have been there. I know a lot of people, a lot of you guys experience that because a ton of people from time to time will come up to me in the lobby. It's like, man, that was such, you know, they tell me how incredible the preaching was or whatever. I'm like, yeah. And no, I'm just kidding. That rarely happens. And they'll say, man, such and such needed to be here for this and all this. And I was like, well, it'll be online. And they're right. Most of them, whenever they go, it's not the same watching it through a screen. They're right. It's just not. You just had to be there. That's kind of what was happening with Jesus here. So he was talking to some religious people, which them, out of all the people in the world at that time, should have understood. He was trying to explain his purpose and his kingdom, why he came. They should have, out of all people, understood why Jesus came, but they just weren't getting it. They just weren't getting it. They were kind of checked out. And so Jesus like, man, I'm going to have to take you there with an Old Testament story. You know, so he had to use an example from the past. So we're going to take a look at this story that Jesus referenced today. And I think it's this Old Testament story. I think today through this Old Testament story, I think God's going to show many of you today really the answer to one of the most insane, frustrating, but important questions in life. And that's this: why am I where I am? I know we can go through life a lot and just wonder that question. Out of everything that's why am I where I am? So we're going to go back to 1 Kings 17. That's the first mention of Elijah. So like I said earlier, he was this incredible prophet. He has a story that really it's not like anybody else's in the Bible. It doesn't seem to follow any type of pattern. Elijah just kind of shows up on the scene, and I think he was not ever recognized, though, as like a hero while he was around. And, that makes you think a little bit about heroes, right? Some great people says, most people like their heroes dead. That's true. That really is true. Sometimes in your life you can go through it, and we try so hard to be the hero. We just try to be the hero, and then we get frustrated when other people don't recognize the effort that went into their provision while they were under your care. We think about this sometimes as parents, right? So this is why we have a lot of parents that aren't parenting anymore, and they're really just trying to be their kid's friend. Look, if your kids think you're cool, you're in trouble. You know what I'm saying? You're not doing a great job at parenting them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay, but sometimes we try to be their hero. But trust me, just stick with being a parent, because the people who are under your provision, they'll never recognize the greatness that they were actually under until it's gone. Let them move out of your house for a while. Let them not experience the wonderful bounty of the groceries that you worked so hard to provide. Let them. It's usually in those moments like now I really do. I have a deep appreciation for the way that I was raised. Was it perfect? No. Did I have a lot of fun? Not much, but man, I was like, I was saying that with my dad last week. I was like, man, I remember, this, that. I'm recounting old stories with him. I was like, yeah, thanks for being a good dad, I guess you weren't as bad as I thought you were, But we feel that way. Sometimes we can get frustrated, though, with people. And you got to be careful. You got to be careful in life. I have to be careful for sure, that you don't get frustrated with trying. People, don't get mad at them if they don't recognize the things that they receive while up under your provision. I think it's important. So it would help if you would, if your perspective would shift a bit and not get so bent out of shape, if you will, whenever the people who are currently in your life don't recognize your contributions to their development in life. And so that's just a good extra piece of wisdom there. Don't get so upset. Shift your perspective. They were never meant to understand or recognize. And so we pick this up in verse 1 of 1 Kings 17. First mention of Elijah. It says, "Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab," Ahab was the king of Israel. He said, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve." He was making a point. He says, I serve this. I serve this God. So he's making a point. You don't. There will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. So check this. Elijah was a bad dude, man. The first statement that we hear, this guy is an incredible man of God. He said, he just told the king, he marched into the palace, told the king of a country whose number one basis of their economy is agriculture. Just told him, says, oh yeah, I'm gonna shut down the skies. There ain't gonna be any rain in your land, nothing, except for at my word. It'll start raining again whenever I tell it to. It says, so after all that, so he threw down this challenge, incredible. What a way to make an entrance into the Bible. It says, then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. It says, leave here, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan, which is crazy. He says, there you will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. It's an interesting word, there. I want to focus on that word, there. Here's what you need to know, is that your provision awaits your obedience. Your provision will always await your obedience. I think it's insane how God uses Elijah mightily and just throws down a challenge. And Elijah got a word from God that says, look, I'm going to shut down this entire country's economy. And so God used that, and then he's telling Elijah, now after you just threatened the king, he says, I want you to leave here. You're so bold to do that. I want you to leave here and go there. But over there, it kind of seems a little crazy because it says go and hide. So if you're bold, why would you go into hiding? So I'm sure Elijah had all these questions, but then he's like, oh, then birds are going to feed you, and I'm going to drink from a brook. It's crazy, but here's what you got to understand. Your provision, your sustainability in life, it's already ahead of you. It's in the place that God wants to plant you. Your provision awaits you, and it always exists in your obedience. So here's Elijah. Jesus is referencing the story of he got sent to a widow in Zarephath, but we don't see him directed there yet. We don't see him directed to a widow in Zarephath, but to a ravine with a brook. And so after the rain stopped falling from Israel, God directs Elijah to a secret stash of supply. God always knows how to take care of his kids that are willing to walk in obedience. It doesn't matter when all hell's breaking loose in your life. And if it's not right now, it will be soon. That's just life. You don't have to panic so much because often God will take you to a place. He knows how to provide for you. If you'll walk in obedience to him, he'll always provide for you. I get a kick out of people. Listen, I have to not watch too much news right now because I get a little freaked out over the whole presidential thing too sometimes, you know what I'm saying? And we're all tripping like crazy. So many people, oh my gosh, their world's going to end if this person or that person. How about we just walk in obedience to God? He's our source, right? So why are we worried about it? We just do our part and we just move on. It's our job as the children of God to walk in obedience to him. I think, so what we see God doing here, and I'm going to go to this first point, this first blank. What we literally see God doing is he's challenging the support system of an entire nation. So I want to talk to you about support systems. You got to see that the people of Israel were trusting in the clouds. They were trusting in the sky. They needed the rain for agriculture. And so you got to understand a bit of the history of what was happening. The neighboring countries, they were praying and crying out to the Phoenician rain god, and his name was Baal. So they were crying out to the Baal, the rain god, to bring the rain. And Israel hadn't been under enough good leaders. Because without leadership and vision, the people will cast off restraint and perish. And so even though these are God's chosen people, you can kind of wander off the path a little bit. And somewhere down the line, Israel thought, that's a good idea. We need rain for crops. And so Israel was crying out to the Phoenician rain god. And so God just he says, I'll fix that. I'm going to challenge and confront the very thing that you're getting your support from. God will cut off your support in order to get you to your source. Sometimes in life, you can start depending on things and we'll think that that the supply and our support is actually from our source, and we've become self-dependent. Not the American dream, a lot of times become independent. And so we have this internal conflict going on a lot of times when we're supposed to be completely dependent on God. Not lazy at all, but we're always working for self-sufficiency and stuff like that. And so we start depending on ourselves, or sometimes we depend on other support systems in our life. God has a unique ability. If those support systems will take us away from our source, he has a way of confronting our support systems in life to bring us back to the source. So when we depend on the Baal, whatever Baal may represent in our life, God has a unique ability to confront Baal. Because when Baal is our support, God can't be your source. So maybe today God's going to bring some of you to a stream of refreshing because you've been wandering in a dry land and your support systems are no longer working and they're crumbling. Your world's literally crumbling in front of your eyes. I don't know if this message is going to be for anybody today, but I really believe that if you feel like life is crumbling out from underneath you, it's because He's got a hidden stream of provision waiting for you. And that's where you're going to find your source and refreshing. I think the problem is that God has to refocus our attention because we've lost sight of why you are or why we are where we are. God will sometimes shut down the sky in your life. Not to kill you. Sometimes we think that God's just... Listen, I understand that God will guide you by what He provides. But God will also guide you by what He withholds too. And sometimes what God doesn't provide us is some of the greatest blessings in life. Because we're too dependent on something that was not truly our source. And He wants our obedience more than He wants our emotions and sacrifice. And so whenever He was laying out the foundations of the universe, you got to understand, He was here to tell His story, not yours. And He had a job for you to do, and then He created you. And whenever we live in response to the sacrifice that was paid for us, and we give our lives to that, whenever we get off track sometimes and we start thinking that life is about us, and we start putting our faith, hope, and trust in systems instead of our source, God just has a way of shutting up the sky, not to kill us, but to bless us. It's crazy sometimes. Sometimes God will shut down our support system and our comfort, not because He's mean, but because He's really good. Because heaven's the prize. He has an unusual way of providing for you when you obey Him. But in order for you to get what God has for you, you can't stay here. You got to get there. So I guess that's a huge question. Where's there? It always exists in obedience. You have to be there to get the blessing. So wherever the there is in your life, you have to get there in order to receive the blessing. Which it really, and I want to calm down just a bit and talk to you as pastorally as I know how. This really makes me worry about a lot of you. I'm not singling anybody out. But it really makes me worry. Thanks. Because it's my job to shepherd you. And so, I get worried because I'll just be really honest. Because sometimes the word that you need to sustain you for the next season of hell that might be just right around the corner exists in your there. And for some of you, there is here. And, honestly, you just don't. It's probably not you guys. I don't know if it is or not. It's probably not. This is the good crowd, right? But you just kind of take it or leave it. Show up when you want. Fun's more important. You'll go do that. It's a sunny day. Ready to go for a walk. It makes me worry for you. Because the blessing that you need is there, but you're not there. And then okay, if I may. I understand that there's a lot of people that's up under some financial hardships. I mean, you're strapped. I'm not saying that you're not. But there's a source of provision. And there's promises in the very Word of God that saved your soul, that says you don't have to live like that. That says, that it's so much so, this is one part of the Bible where God says, you test me in this. But we refuse to tithe. And we wonder why we're up under a financial, it's because you're, literally, I love you, but you're living under a financial curse. You say, well, some of you're tipping God and you're not tithing to Him. And say, well, I don't know how to get it. And then we provide small groups with the resources are there to help move you from one place or another to another, to get you from here to there, whether it's in your finances or whether it's in your mentality and your spirituality and your past. You can't get past your past, but we have a life group that helps you deal with that, and you don't. And so I'm just being honest with you. You scare me. It's insane. The mindset of people. God will bring unexpected increase in your life in an area, and you'll brag about it like a bonus instead of an opportunity to worship. You think it's a bonus instead of a test, and I'm scared because you just keep failing the test. Okay, so anyways, sorry about that. See, it comes across a lot nicer when I don't elevate my voice, and you're like, oh my gosh, he won't stop staring at me. All he needs is love, man. All right, verse 5. This is so important. Elijah, so he did what the Lord had told him. Listen to me. If your provision exists in your obedience, doesn't matter how you feel, no matter your emotion. Listen, my friend. Even if you think you're strong as an oak, you are an emotional wreck. You are. And if you're drug around by your, I'm not coming back because he made me mad, or this person made me mad, or they said, oh my gosh, it's insane. So he went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed, there's that word again, there. He had to get there, and he stayed there. That's where his provision was. And check this out. It says, the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning. How cool is that? Like, you just get steak dropped off for breakfast by a bird. And then you get bread and meat in the evening. And he drank from the brook. That's incredible. Like, why would you ever leave that place? Like, the land is experiencing a famine because you spoke in obedience the word of God to confront a support system of a disobedient nation. And so God had this secret stash for you, and things was going good. You would never leave. That's better than room service. I'm talking, you don't even have to get out from underneath your tree or wherever you're at. Birds are dropping off room service. You know what I'm saying? I would never leave. It says sometime later the brook dried up. Because there had been no rain in the land. Why was there no rain in the land? Because Elijah obeyed God and says there's not going to be more rain in the land. It's just, here's what I want to say to you. Don't get too used to what God is providing for you here. If you get used to what God's providing for you here in life, the Bible, the story is there's an expectation of growth on your life. And God's continually moving you and growing you and stretching you and increasing you. But if you get too comfortable with the support system here, you will never move there. And so God had to, here's the deal. God knows you're obedient on this level. Nice. I want to see if you're going to be obedient on the next level. He wants to move you to the next. There's always something next in your life. Look at your neighbor and say, there's always something next. There's something next. But you're so comfortable in the now that in order to move you to the next, the very provision that he provided for you in the first place must dry up. That's rough. See, because you thought you came to a church where the pastor told you that following Jesus was easy. Sometimes, though, we get comfortable, like, God, I know you called me here. I like here. I think I want to stay here. Sometimes God's got to dry up the provision in order to move you on. God will use a need in your life to reveal your next step. Like I said, he guides by not only what he provides, but also what he withholds. Verses 8 and 9, it says, so the brook dried up, and then it says, then. That's important. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once. Don't go tomorrow. Don't go in a week. It says go at once. Go right now to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I know I brought you here. And I know you thought this was for life. And I know you thought, and this does not apply to your marriage, all right? Don't nudge your wrist. Say, baby, I told you I was moving on. You know, no. There, he says, the Lord says, I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. I think it's so cool because he appointed the birds with the provision in the ravine. Then in Zarephath, he directed a widow. I think it's always there that God blesses. Some of you literally didn't ever want to be here. It was never your intentions to be here, but wherever there used to be, wherever you was at, it dried up. And it forced you to come here. Some of you was on your last leg, your last hope. You needed something. I'm going to give God one more chance. Wherever you was, maybe that's how you even moved to this area. Because wherever you used to be, dried up. So God just took you here, you're like, there go my men Joplin now, where it go? And so God brought you here. So you're there to become here. What do you do when here becomes the new there? When things are drying up? Listen, this is wisdom. A little side advice. Do not, when things are drying up in your life, don't pout about it and whine and cry and scream and throw a tantrum at the brook for drying up. You'll look foolish. When things dry up in your life, you need to ask God, what's next? Because he's trying to guide you by what he's withholding from you. Life isn't random. Life is not random. It's not at all. It may seem random, but life's not random. He's already appointed for your provision in there, but you just got to move from here to there, wherever that is in your life. All Elijah knows is that a widow will feed him. He doesn't get any details. And so the next point, really quick, is ulterior motives. Ulterior motives. I don't know if I'll get through all this today. You might just have to come back next week, and I can tell you the rest of it in a little bit. Or we could stay all day. I've got time. Yeah, okay. Thanks. Got permission? We're rolling on. Ulterior motives. That really literally means, when somebody says one thing, but it has another meaning. It means something else. God often, and listen, don't check out on me here. God often operates with ulterior motives. That's not, I'll explain it. It's not blasphemous or anything like that. But God will sometimes trick you. He'll say things like, go into the land in which I will show you. Okay, just go. You should just go. It's great. It's the promised land. The grapes are huge, but so are the giants. If you knew how big the giants were and how hard you were going to have to fight once you got there, you would never go. So God will trick you sometimes. It's a lot like, one example I can use is marriage. Look, we got tricked into that thing. Listen, there's no problem with, I'm not talking about, I love my wife. I'm talking, listen, if you knew how bad it was going to be at times, look, the women, all they do is get excited. You get focused about the wedding day. The guys, all they get excited about is the honeymoon. But if you would have known that 10 years down the road and 3 kids later and a mortgage payment to the hilt and trying to work 3 jobs during a recession was going to happen, you might have rethought that thing. So God doesn't give you all the details. But see, you thought that you were getting married because this person made you happy. Ha ha. You did. Then you realize, but listen. Then you realize somewhere in partnership, God knew that you needed to be connected. It wasn't good for you to do life alone because you were too incredibly selfish and dangerous on your own. You needed that other part. You needed a partner in life. You needed a partner in life that could bring things out of you and God could do things through them to reveal who you were always called to be. You need a partner in life. And so marriage is great, but you got tricked into it. They told, church, plant a church. It'll be fun. God just said, go do it. I was like, all right. Oh, do. And then you showed up. I'm just kidding. God will trick you. You know what I'm saying? God will trick you. He'll trick you into taking the job, and you'll take it for money. But you didn't know it wasn't about the money. He put you there to make a difference. He'll trick you. God will trick you into coming to church. That's how he picked me off. God made me fall in love with a girl. Girl says, I love you, but you're going to go to church with me. Okay. I love you. I do whatever. But I had to get there. God had to get me there, whatever it took. Even if it took tricking me with a woman, who's now in my life, thank God. He'll trick you. He'll do whatever, ulterior motives. He'll do whatever it takes to get you there because there's where your provision is. It was there that I got saved. It was there that I got redeemed and set free and called. You got to get there. Tell your neighbor, I got to go. I got to get there. Which I think was interesting because there now for Elijah was in a town that he wasn't real familiar with. And God says, I'm going to provide for you by a widow. I'm like, God, if you're going to provide for me, why don't you send me over to like a wealthy businessman or something, you know? But a widow. But at this point, see, Elijah had already walked through enough seasons with God to know, God works in unusual circumstances. And so he the problem with a lot of people is they won't take their next step because it sounds weird. Can I tell you what? God specializes in the weird and unusual. That's why he chose you. See, Elijah already knew, hey, I just spent some time with birds dropping off breakfast. I think if a bird can do it, I think I'll go. It says, so he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, as soon as he got there, check this out. A widow was there. Was already there. I think it's so cool how God orchestrates everything and nothing's random. She was there gathering sticks. It's crazy. We'll see why she's gathering sticks. It says he called to her and asked. So it's more than conversation. He had to call over to her, so he's got an elevated voice a bit. Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I can have a drink, woman? But she was nice about it. Because it says, as she was going to get it, she was being pretty polite, especially if you knew you're getting ready to find out what was going on in her life. It says, as she was going to get it, he called out to her again. Hey, and while you're at it, bring me a piece of bread. Hey, make me a sandwich, woman. Mm-hmm. So, literally, the Bible says, as surely as the Lord your God lives. And so here's exactly, that's translated, but here's exactly what she's saying. I swear to God. Oh, she's got attitude now. She goes, I swear to God, I don't have any bread. Only a handful of flour in a little jar and a little olive oil in a tiny jug. And sucker, I am gathering a few sticks. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to build me a fire. I'm going to make a meal for me and myself, my son. Me and myself and my son. Yeah, whatever. She's hungry. She's delirious. That we can eat it and die. You ask me for bread. You take your bread and shove it, boy. Elijah said, chill out, woman. Calm down, calm down. Didn't mean to call you all that. He says, don't be afraid. Look. Just go home and do as you've said. I can clearly see that you're upset. Hey, but first, make me a small loaf of bread. From what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. It's crazy, man. But let me tell you something. It's really interesting here because you had a nation, a prophet, and a widow that were all in crisis. They were all, their three worlds or universes were intersecting at this moment. Can I tell you something? Callings are always born in times of crisis. Callings are always born and formed in times of crisis. It's interesting because at this point, you think that what God's brought you through or is bringing you through or is calling you from here to there. See, Elijah thought that he was going there so God could feed him. But when he got there, Elijah knew, oh, I see what's going on. God didn't bring me here so she could feed me. It's so God could feed her through me. There's something for you to keep in mind that sometimes, here's what you got to understand. Is like life, seriously, life is not about you on any level. That's really hard for men to deal with. It's just not, it was a hard thing for me to deal with. It's just not about you on any level. And sometimes we cry out to God to do something to us, and then we can be used by him so he can do something through us. But here's what you need to keep in mind. A lot of times God, he wants to get something through you to get it to you. Let me explain it this way. He'll put you in a moment of somebody else's mess, somebody else's crisis. And see, he understood that you didn't have any joy, but the only way to get you joy, to get it to you, was to get joy through you. So he'd have you do something else in somebody else's mess to get joy to them, but really it was coming to you. And you really needed peace in your life. So he put you next to somebody that was freaking out, worse than you. He wanted to get peace to your soul, so he sent peace through you to calm them down. Life's not about you. Elijah understood, I see why I'm sitting here. There's a bigger story going on here. This was never about me. Here's something that helps me. I'm already over on time. But I'm going to leave you with this. And we might finish it next week, or we might never finish it. But when you get to from here to there, wherever there is, it's not for you, it's for them. Here's the problem with that, just from my experience. I'm just going to talk to you about my struggles. Maybe you can relate to them. The issue is whenever you get there, you got to make sure you have the right them. I've got like 2 critics in my life. Sometimes I'll just be really honest with you. I let the controversy and the critics and what people are saying, and I know we're a family here, so it affects everybody sometimes, but I let that consume me. And I often think about, whenever that consumes me, I'm just thinking about them. Why did God brought me here? My here was there to preach to them, but here's the deal. You can't, in the words of Taylor Swift, hate is going to hate. You know what I'm saying? You got to have the right them in your life, because if you focus on the wrong them, you'll be expending a lot of energy that God's like, I didn't send you there for them. So I've got a wild imagination. I do. I daydream all the time. And often, so on Sunday mornings, I have a routine. And there's a lot of different things that go into the routine, but one of the things that go into the routine is my imagination. And it's the them in my life. And so I'll just sit there, I'll be getting ready, and I'll think about, I'll go through praying and all that God used me today. I'm a tool in your hands, and that's what I want to be. But then I start imagining who's going to sit in the seats today. And then there's the single mom with 4 kids that's been abused by her ex-husband or husbands, maybe all 4 of them. She feels worthless, used up. These kids are dependent on her. She's trying to work 2 jobs, but the babysitter situation is not working out. She's at the end of her rope. She doesn't want to turn the kids over to state, but she doesn't know what else to do. So God brought her here. And I think about the junkie that comes in, still coming down off of his high. Right before he shot up last night, he swore that this was going to be the last time that he would ever do it. And he was going to give church a shot, see if God could do anything about it. And then I think about the other person that come in that's been so hurt and abused by church in the past. Raised in a pastor's home. Things went crazy wrong. You swore off this God stuff. But your brook dried up somewhere else. And God brought you here for one more shot. And I imagine all these people, then I come here and I preach to them. So it'll do you no good to get from here to there if once you get there, you're spending all your energy on the wrong them. Because you didn't get there for you. Oh, God will provide for you. But He's wanting to do something through you for them. Does that make any sense? That's some good preaching today. Let's just end it there, all right? I love you. Let's pray. Bow your heads.